Welcome to Speakernomics, the official podcast of the National Speakers Association. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. And like you, I'm a professional speaker and I love listening to Speakernomics. Speakernomics is a professional speaker show that will help you thrive and grow a speaking business so you too can change the world, one keynote session, workshop, and speech at a time. And on this episode, we welcome Linda Hollander. Linda is a leading expert on corporate sponsorships, the CEO of Sponsor Concierge, an author, an international speaker, and coach who works with speakers to help them with the awesome power of corporate sponsors. Linda, welcome to Speakernomics. How are you today?
I am doing great. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, to all my speaking friends, who would sponsor your talk? You're a speaker after all, and someone pays you for your message. But is the value of your time on stage, a podcast, a blog, or somewhere else, is that time and message worth someone sponsoring that message, speaking and getting something of value out to the world for them? After all, those sponsors can help you get more speaking opportunities, media, credibility, and resources as a speaker. Then the question is, how can you fund your speaking business and get paid to speak with sponsors? And before we jump in, make sure to go to speakernomics.com. That's where you can find the tips, insights, and knowledge to help you become a better speaker, build a better business, and get paid to speak. Linda, let's dive in. First of all, how did you get into the sponsorship arena? I'm a little familiar with this space, but I want to leave it to the experts. How does someone move into this space and how do they position themselves immediately for sponsors, whether they're a new speaker or somebody that's a seasoned pro that's been doing it for years?
Okay, well, I work with both. I work with the emerging sponsor seekers, the people who've never worked with a sponsor before, and the seasoned pros like you who work with sponsors. So let me first give you the definition of sponsorship. The definition is connecting a company to people who buy things. And as speakers, we could do that because we have a platform, we have an audience, we have a brand. So I'll tell you really quickly how I got into it. I wanted to be a speaker, and everybody said, well, speak for free, do Chamber of Commerce and the Elks Lodge and the Lions Club and the Loyal Order of Water Buffaloes and speak for free. And in 10 years, maybe you'll be a speaker. And I said, well, I don't want to wait that long. So what I did was I created my own branded event called the Women's Small Business Expo, because starting my business got me out of the poverty trap and it got me out of an abusive relationship. And I wanted to show other women how to do what I had done, because I got together with a friend from school and we created a multi-million-dollar business. And, I wasn't afraid to go to my mailbox anymore, because I would go to my mailbox. My hand would shake because there were bills there I could never afford to pay. Starting my business made all the good things in my life happen. I moved out of my little rent-controlled apartment, bought my first home as a single woman. It was amazing starting my business. So I want to do this Women's Small Business Expo. And I say, hey, how am I going to pay for it? And that's when I found out, hey, there's these things called sponsors who will underwrite your event, your public speaking, if you want to be an author, if you want to be a content creator and do a podcast or a blog, or if you have a nonprofit, you can get sponsors. So I think this is important for you to know. I had never done an event in my life. I wasn't with my business anymore. I was at home with my cat, so I didn't have a fancy office. And I think this is important for people to know. I had no following at the time. I had no fan base. Nobody knew who the heck I was, except for my parents, my brother-in-law, and the cat. So with no experience, no following, no office, my very first sponsors were Bank of America, Walmart, and IBM. Now, I got these sponsors before I opened the doors to my first event. So I made a profit day one. And then I did that event, the Women's Small Business Expo, for 10 years. On my deathbed, I will be so proud of the work that I did at the Women's Small Business Expo, because women met their business partners there. Women got the missing pieces of the puzzle they needed to create their own multi-million-dollar business. And it was all because of sponsors.
So how did you approach, with you and your cat, how did you approach the Bank of America, or how should anybody approach them when they're thinking about this? Because a lot of people might think, well, I need to go to the banking association and try to get on those stages and, ultimately maybe pitch them or pitch Bank of America directly or any bank with a meeting planner. But that is a different approach than you took.
Yeah, it's a different approach. I actually just cold called Bank of America. Now, it's not as easy to do that anymore, but that's what I did at the time. I basically was stuck in traffic. I saw a billboard for Bank of America, but I didn't go home and call them. I was so afraid, and fear keeps most people from reaching their big dreams. I was so afraid that they wouldn't take me seriously. I'm this little short, frizzy-haired Jewish girl with a cat in a kitchen, and if they took my call, I'd make a fool out of myself. They'd reject me. I buried the idea for about 2 weeks, but I did summon the courage. I called Bank of America, and the guy said, come on down. So I took my car, and I think this is important for people to know. I took my sponsor proposal. You're going to need a sponsor proposal. I showed it to him. He looked at it. He gave it back to me, said, yes, we will sponsor you. And wow. When I got to my car after that meeting, first of all, I wanted to scream, but I'm in a fancy bank building with my one good suit on. So I wiped my hand on the back of my suit because I was so nervous. I shook his hand, walked back to my car, and then did the happy dance, because there's nothing like the feeling of getting your first sponsor. I mean, somebody believes in you, and somebody is investing in you. It's like getting your first speaking gig, and one sponsor leads to another. And sponsors are the key to fulfilling your dream. And right now, in the speaking business, there's a new paradigm. People aren't just moving from gig to gig, getting paid, searching for the next gig, searching for the next gig. You want to create some kind of recurring revenue, and you could do that with sponsorships.
Now, with the bank, did you approach a local branch, or did they tackle this from a national? Obviously, because I've done some work with the Bank of America before, but you think about the scale of that bank. It's obviously a huge bank, but I'm curious, were they helping promote a local message or a national message in doing so with the sponsorship with you?
Great question. People ask me all the time, do I approach local or do I approach the national corporate office? And I say do both. And I did both. It was the local office of Bank of America that raised their hand and said they were interested. And remember that definition I gave in the beginning. Sponsorship is connecting a company to people who buy things. Bank of America had an initiative. They wanted more women-owned businesses because they saw the rise in women-owned businesses and what businesses can do for a bank. They get a twofer. They can make business loans. A lot of business owners have a home. They could make a home loan. They could do a refinance. They could do wealth planning. So they really had an initiative in that particular area.
Talk about what the sponsors' expectations and wants are as well. You and I spoke a little bit earlier, and I did some sponsored speaking years ago before I, fully cut the cord and went all in on professional speaking. But I had worked with a sponsor before, and one of the things with helping them craft their message versus necessarily the message that I wanted to speak, there sometimes isn't always a perfect overlap. And when you start thinking about what sponsors want versus what you want, and it can get messy if you don't think through it right. So talk a little bit about how to navigate through working with a sponsor who has their own specific expectations on what message they want to get out.
The best way to handle that is from the beginning, from the get-go, really glean what their intentions are, glean what benefits they're looking for, because some companies are looking for community building. Some companies are looking to create goodwill. Some companies are down and dirty and they want sales, they want leads, they want to grow their customer base, they want to increase brand loyalty. So find out what sponsors are looking for. I've had sponsors who sponsored me because they wanted to tell people about a new product, a new service, and it was a good way to get the word out about that. As far as influencing your content as a speaker, I've never had a sponsor try to change my content. I've really been lucky in that way. And after 20 years, my clients haven't either. So I guess if a sponsor really wanted to influence my content, I'd say, well, that's not part of the program, and that's the beauty of sponsorship, is that you design the program.
We'll give some examples then of what they're actually looking for when they decide to back a speaker or a podcast or a book or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of sponsors are looking to increase brand loyalty because there's a certain attrition that happens with companies where people stop using a product, stop using a service. So they always have to be increasing loyalty. They want to grow their customer base. That is absolutely mission critical. And remember, sponsors sometimes are companies with shareholders, and they have to answer to their shareholders. A lot of sponsors are looking for brand building. A lot of sponsors are looking to create awareness and exposure. So I mentioned Bank of America, and Bank of America is what we call a top tier sponsor. But maybe there's a local community bank wherever you are that doesn't have the budget of Bank of America, doesn't have the top of mind awareness of Bank of America, and they need to get the word out. So that would be what we call a second tier strategy with an up and coming brand that really needs to get the word out.
So talk about the ROI, how you help, and I'm sure you do this on the front end as well, but helping them understand what their expectations are, as well as what their later expectations will be on ROI, because it's sometimes hard to measure, to your point, brand awareness or, sell leads and everything else, depending on what it is that you're selling as part of the sponsorship package. But obviously they are going to have some level of expectation on what it is they expect on the back end.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, there's tangibles and there's intangibles in sponsorship. So the intangibles are the things we just talked about, brand building and goodwill and all that. Sometimes damage control is a reason that a company would sponsor you. One of my first sponsors was Walmart, and there was a lot of bad publicity going around about Walmart and the way they treated the women in their company. And remember, I was doing a women's small business expo. So they called me and said, please, can we sponsor you? Because they needed to clean up their brand image. So think of all the brands right now that need, damage control with their image. That could be your opportunity. So let's talk about the tangibles and the intangibles. So those are intangibles, is cleaning up their image, building their image, because that's everything. But the tangibles are likes and shares and open rates for email. You could do email campaigns for sponsors. You could do social media campaigns for sponsors. And those things you can see. Those are the tangibles. And by the way, a share is better than a like with a social media campaign to promote your sponsor. You can see how many people read a blog, how many unique visitors there are to a website. So those are the things that sponsors can actually measure, as well as the things they can't measure.
So give us an example then of where some of these sponsorship deals turned into, that you've seen either with you or with your clients, longer term brand partnerships, as well as opportunities to maybe keynote on those main stages for those clients themselves.
Let's see. Well, I had a client who had a dog lover blog, and he got Black & Decker. We helped him get Black & Decker as a sponsor, and he also did speaking and things like that. So we got Black & Decker because I didn't even know this, but we did some research and found out that they make little dust busters and small appliances to clean up after your pets. So we created some contests because sponsors love contests, because those are things that get people engaged with the brand. And he got some speaking opportunities because the sponsors had some speaker opportunity connections. Now, what we have our speaker clients do for their sponsors is you could put the sponsors in a slide. And if you use a slide deck, a PowerPoint slide, if you do any kind of a handout, you could promote your sponsors on the handout. And oh my God, they love to do this. They love to introduce you. Have your sponsor come where you're speaking and introduce you, because they love that. And don't worry, sponsors don't want to be obnoxious. They don't want to be in your face. You're not going to turn into a flea circus. They're going to say, hi, I'm from XYZ company. I'm proud to introduce this sponsor. And if you need any information about our company, we have a table right there. And that's another thing that a speaker can provide to a sponsor is sometimes they give you a vendor table to sell books, etc. You could either share that table with your sponsors, or you could get a separate table for your sponsors. When I was speaking once, I got a separate table for FedEx, and the meeting planner was happy to provide that because guess what? They want to talk to FedEx. They want to network with the decision makers at FedEx. So they're very happy to provide that.
You mentioned some great brands that everybody knows. You mentioned Bank of America and Walmart and FedEx. Are there specific categories or verticals or industries who are more likely to work with professional speakers than others?
Yeah, my favorite category is banking and financial. First of all, we talked about damage control, and nobody loves their bank. Nobody is a cheerleader for their bank. So banks need to do sponsorships to make themselves brand friendly to the public at large. They need to do that. So my first sponsor was Bank of America. After that, I got Wells Fargo and Citibank as sponsors. I love banks, and banks need damage control because the bank sometimes does things that make my blood boil. But the nicest people I've ever worked with are the people in the sponsorship departments because they just give away money. Banks is a great category. And we'll include financial in there, which is wealth planning and other things. Credit cards. Insurance. Insurance is an amazing, amazing category. So much money there. They're so openly competitive with each other. The commercials, they compare brands right in the open out loud on the commercials. So insurance is a great category. I like the category that we call consumables. Consumables are things you use every day that you don't even pay attention to. Like if you have kids, if you have pets, you use paper towels to clean up after the kids, after the pets. And you'll notice all these companies are boring. Then there's more money in the boring stuff because a lot of especially my female clients, they want fashion and accessories and cosmetics, and there's not as much money there as the boring companies. And then lastly, food and beverage is a monster category in corporate sponsorships, as well as technology with mobile apps. And a lot of mobile apps are flush because they have investor financing.
Well, who are you typically approaching? Because, a lot of people, as far as the pure speaking world, they're always looking for some sort of events director or event person who they can say, hey, take a look at my speaker reel and here's all my marketing, speaking collateral and stuff. Are you always approaching those people connected with, or is it more of the, like the example you brought, the local, manager at the bank would obviously be a totally different person, but it got you connected to the same kind of money?
I work with here's the thing about sponsorships. There's all kinds of job titles. There's not really a consistency because I work with community relations, public affairs, corporate communications, strategic partnerships, brand management. Not every company has brand management, but we recommend you get a list of the decision makers. But if you want to do it on your own, I would start with marketing. And then marketing can lead you to the right department.
Well, speaking of marketing, what are the type of, say, marketing assets that you would need to position yourself more, to suit yourself, not necessarily more for sponsors than for keynotes and other events, but maybe when you take a look at a traditional speaker and then add this dash of cinnamon or paprika or whatever the spice is, what is the spice, if you will, as far as assets go, that they need to add a little bit more of to make it a little more attractive to sponsors?
First of all, you're not just the speaker anymore. You're a media company and you're an influencer, because that's really what sponsors are looking for now. People who are influencers, people who have done media, people who are not shy about promoting themselves and promoting their sponsors. So anything you could do, I don't even turn down any podcast requests, even if it's the guy in his mother's basement. I don't care. He may be the next big thing tomorrow. So any media requests, please just do them. Don't turn it down. As well as, of course, the long lead media. I've been on all the major alphabet networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine have called me the leading expert on corporate sponsorships. And that's what I want speakers to know, that traditional media is not dead, because I ask them, I ask my speaker clients, I say, how do you get the word out? And they say, oh, well, social media and the digital platforms. Include some traditional media in the mix, because sponsors are traditional and they like that.
A good friend of mine does this often. I know it's not his full business, but I want to ask you, you alluded to this earlier and kind of go in a little more detail about working with charitable organizations in a way to possibly work with sponsors in some sort of collective fashion to help get the word out for charitable organizations, as well as help sponsors get you into those speaking gigs where maybe necessarily you wouldn't have had that brand affiliation, if you will.
Oh my God. Having a charitable partner, I encourage everybody to have a charitable partner. You're going to get more speaking gigs. You're going to get more media, because in order to keep their license, a radio station has to do a certain amount of public affairs programming, and you could get media gigs that way. My charitable partner is Junior Achievement, and that's a nonprofit. So they had me on. If you don't know what Junior Achievement does, they teach young people entrepreneurship skills, which is great. So they had me on with one of the graduates, a 19-year-old graduate of Junior Achievement, and they told her story. And then he says, oh, and you have an event coming up too. So I kind of got publicity for my event. And as a speaker, every time you speak, it's a live event. Whether you don't need to do your own branded event like I've done and that Kenneth has done, you could be speaking on somebody else's platform, and it is considered a live event. So that's why a charitable partner is great. People will pay you more if you're donating part of it to a nonprofit charity. And cause marketing is so big now, it is absolutely scorching. That happened kind of before the pandemic, but it was ratcheted up after the pandemic. So now you need a charitable partner. And if you're a nonprofit already, you don't need a partner. But if you're a for-profit like me, you need a charitable partner.
Well, what is one speaker success story that maybe gives you goosebumps where sponsorship sort of transformed either their platform or their business?
One of my favorite clients, and she is an NSA member, her name is Carolyn Gross, and she came to me because basically she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and a lot of doctors told her she needed a complete mastectomy, and she says, I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to cut into my body. And she found out how to heal her cancer with natural alternative medicine. So you don't need a hard business topic. So she wrote this great book called Treatable and Beatable for women with cancer. And she got all these great sponsors. She got a foot detox company because that's part of her modality, a natural tea company. She got really, really great sponsors. So, she got to do her own events. She got to spread the word because, see, as speakers, we're in the life-changing business. Now, does she have an important message to get out to the world? Absolutely. So she got to do that with having sponsors.
And how's she doing now? Do you know?
She is a cancer thriver for over 15 years.
God bless.
And she's doing amazing.
Now for a little speaking trivia. How many professional speakers are estimated to live today in the United States? Back with the answer in just a moment. Before we jump back to the show, here's a moment with NSA member, speaker, and author, Bruce Scheer. Bruce, what does being part of NSA mean to you and your speaking business?
Oh, thanks for asking. I love the NSA. I've been on the board for the last 5 years of NSA Northwest, and what it means for me, just this huge opportunity for a collective group of peers to come together to influence each other and lift each other up. And what we're doing over at NSA Northwest, it's been fantastic. And then it scales nationally and globally. So just being part of this community of professional speakers is wonderful for learning things, for having people highlight your blind spots, and also just the ability to contribute to others and see others, rise and succeed. It's just been a huge joy to me. Thanks for asking.
And here's the answer. Including full-time and part-time, it is estimated that there are approximately 40,000 who speak professionally and live today in the United States. And now, back to the show. Well, tell us, what are you going to be speaking about at Influence?
I'm going to be speaking a lot more about how you as a speaker can get paid and you can fund your speaking business with sponsors. I want you to think of what you do as a business. Getting, like we said, getting paid for the gigs is great, but you want multiple revenue streams, and one of them could be sponsorship. And sponsorship can be recurring revenue, because if a sponsor likes you, they can fund you this year, the next year, and the next year. So it's just a really amazing way to leverage your platform skills, to leverage your business as a speaker.
So a question I want to ask you from a previous guest is, what is the one strategy that you've used in sales that changes the way you sell?
The one strategy I've used in sales that changes the way I sell is kind of what I said earlier. Really ask people questions. Make your first meeting with somebody a fact-finding expedition. Listen more than you talk. Find out what's important to that person, that meeting planner, that potential sponsor, and offer brilliant solutions to them. Because I'll go back a little bit to my FedEx story. And when I got FedEx as a sponsor, I said that. I said, what are you looking for? And I was going to give them a trade show booth and signage. And they said, trade show booth and signage means nothing to us. Everybody knows FedEx. What we want to do is we want to rebrand, because people think we're the expensive white glove shipping company, and we're really not. So we gave them press releases. We gave them a speaking opportunity. We did all this really great stuff for FedEx. And the cool thing is they sponsored us for years, not just 1 year. It was like next year and next year. And they said, oh, just send me an invoice. I didn't have to resell them every year, because we listened to what they wanted. And that's really the best advice that I've ever heard about making a sale, is listen to what that person wants. Don't just go immediately into a presentation.
Outstanding. Well, what is a question that you would like to ask a future guest on this show?
What I would like to ask a future guest on Speakernomics is, I want to know, first of all, I know people really want to know this. I want to know what's happened to you in the past that you would change. What's the one thing you would change in the trajectory of your speaking career? Would you have done this sooner? Would you have done that sooner? Would you have learned more about this topic, more about that topic? And of course, AI. I feel I don't really know as much as I should about artificial intelligence and how it can affect my business. So I want to know about that too.
Well, there is a great session at Influence about AI, I know in particular. So you got to go see that. And then if you want to know the changes that I would have made, that's about an 8-hour show. I don't have enough time to go over all the things I would have done differently and less wrong. All right, well, let's do a quick recap then based on Linda's non-sponsored advice. Number one, to her, she looks at sponsors as connecting a company to people who buy things with no experience so following and no office, but she did have a cat. That's where she got her first one, and it was a big one. Did it for 10 years. Identify the problem that a company has and how they need to connect it to an audience, and then help them with that solution. She recommends connecting with both local and national. Wherever you can, make that connection. And really handle the expectations from the beginning. A lot of those sponsors are looking to create awareness. They're looking to expand more loyalty, but you're helping them connect to an audience, and that's really important wherever they are. And also, make sure you understand if you're trying to help them with tangibles or intangibles. Number two, you're not just a speaker anymore. You're an influencer. Thinking about your media brand, help them get the word out, helps you get the word out. And number 3, have a charitable partner. It's a great way to get media attention as well. I've done it in the past as well. Linda, in fact, goes to events to talk about junior achievement, goes on media. It's another important way to get the word out for both of you. Linda, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Influence. Any last closing thoughts before we speak ourselves off this stage?
Well, I want you to just hold your head up high. Know that you can do this. Know that you could become a professional speaker. Know that you could go international, have all these great adventures as a speaker. Know that you could get sponsors and that you have value to offer your sponsors. And that's what I want to show you when we meet at Influence.
Outstanding. Friends, make sure to join us at Speakernomics.com and let your voice be heard. I'm Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host of the National Speakers Association's podcast, Speakernomics, and this has been another fantastic episode of the show. Thank you, Linda, for your service to NSA and for lending your voice to the show. And everyone listening, thank you for the privilege of your time. And remember, Speakernomics is a podcast where you'll learn to speak, get paid, repeat.